Oh, I think this episode will be called Statements in History. Hello, this is Vision Denial, and here we're going to be clearing MSI, Day 4, where we're going to be exploring Group A, who finished their run of the quadruple best of ones. Ugh. A lot of games for just 3 teams. Huh. Well, let's just jump into it. So, I've been, debating back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But I think it's important to, measure the ways that you can evaluate these games. But because they're best of ones and not, long form best of fives, I'm going to, review them like I have done every other episode so far, game after game after game. So, let's get to it. First game. We got ourselves Unicorns of Love versus Royal Never Give Up in game 1 of the day. And my goodness, is this not a absolute train wreck? Granted, I think this is the most positive game out of UOL. It's like, there's not many positive games. Even their win I didn't think was great. But specifically in this game, I'm pretty happy to see a lot more proactivity, much smarter draft. I think this is the smartest draft they have all game. Or all day, sorry. It's too bad they never replicated later. It's just like, oh man. Alright, so I can appreciate that there's some proactivity that UOL is going for and that they're properly punishing RNG's absolutely reckless behavior. Royal Never Give Up also have a long set of games that are just, the word disrespectful comes to mind, but I don't know if that's really the case. Maybe it's just that there's such a huge gap between the two, and I do honestly think that there's a really big gap between the two. It's just that unfortunately, it's hard to really evaluate how that would work out at the end of the day. So, it just became one of those things where there's fights after fights after fights, and RNG got a lot of those games throughout. I do think that, however, the same thing about Royal Never Give Up RNG's presence is their incredible vision play, good vision denial, usually very good setup. I just unfortunate that they're the disrespect that they show, or the amount of fast and loose, as the casters would put it, straight up halts a lot of the tempo that they have. And because I think that if it came down to it and they were taking this a lot more seriously, there would be, I don't think, this level of words. The words are at the tip of my tongue here. It's because disrespect doesn't feel right in this context, and it's not there's a whole lot of carelessness, but it definitely feels like limit testing, for the better sake of the lack of a better word. They were definitely trying to feel out what the meta is and how they would approach it, and I think they took advantage of the fact that they are in a group that their only competition is not in the tournament at this moment. Well, they still close fairly effectively. I'm very happy to see that at least like the core parts of it for me, like the vision, how they start the early game, neutral objective setups, and closing out games are still solidly there. It's just that there are so many steps in between that RNG go for that tend to halt the tempo, uh, and show more or less that there's like that this is not to them. This is like just a the warm up to the next stage, and like fair enough, really is the warm up for them. Unicorns of Love, however, like this is the most proactive that, or it's not the most proactive, but this is where like I think the biggest portion of their proactivity of the day falls short. And it's really unfortunate. And at that point, then RNG goes up 5-0, BOL go 1-4. We get to the next game with Pentanet GG and UOL. So UOL and then Pentanet GG. And I gotta say, I very much appreciate that despite Pentanet's not awkward, what is the word? Eccentric pick and ban scenarios, that at least they have like an understanding of how the meta works. While as UL is still getting the hang of it. Because I hate this Nidalee pick. I hate all Nidalee picks so far. I think it's got like a terrible win rate. I would have to confirm that. But like, it's usually not paired with anything that works long term or for the early game for it to like give any significant leads. And you picked a composition that has like a very awkward set of engages. Now, they still win this game, if I remember correctly. Yes, they do still win this game. And I think this is more on Pentanet than it is on the Unicorns. Let's take my notebook. There's late jungle tracking when it came to anything. UOL had the tempo most of the game, but they kept fumbling on a lot of different plays. But I appreciate that they understood what their win conditions were and what Pentanet's win conditions were in this particular game. It's just weird because Pentanet was, let's see, put her behind, and yeah, but it's unfortunate because like UOL's laning phase itself was fairly weak compared to all of the others, and this is where I think things started getting weird for me, or like it looked pretty dire for the Unicorns, because so like they're tied at this point. They do eventually win this game. They close pretty okay. They punish the poor neutral objective setups that Pentanet have, but especially with a good setup of vision and understanding of the pressure that is around them. There's like a part of me that goes, the first like 14 minutes of the game was really fumbled completely. Like Unicorns was in the tempo lead, but all of their laners were losing in gold, in all points. They had given up 2 Drakes and not taken a single Herald as an answer. This was just absolutely baffling to me, that you have this entire control over the game and you are losing on all fronts. And Pentanet wasn't doing very much to answer in this game. And that's the thing that also weirds me out, is that this is, I think, the weakest showing from Pentanet in all of the groups so far. And not because, like, they had some pretty weak showing. Both of these teams have had pretty weak showing. This is kind of why I put them down on the list, because even when like top teams are super competitive, there's at least something that shows like some form of competitiveness, or like grit or anything proactive that you can measure. And it's usually hard when it comes to RNG. So the only thing that we compare the two to see how they compare to the rest of the tournament is each other. And this game was not a good viewpoint for Pentanet either. It's not looking sharp for them. I don't have very much confidence in them when they get to the Rumble stage. It's not a fan of the name, but you know, yeah. because like the Pentanet did have the gold lead. They did have the opportunity to keep like control the tempo, and they had poor map movement that came from it. And it gets rectified near the end of the day. And, like, it's a thing that they clearly are improving on, and it's not the most improved team I've seen all year, but there is something there showing a sense of improvement and a focus to actually try, as goofy as they may be. Like they may come from a poor region, but it's pretty good. They still do lose due to like a pretty sharp mess up, but you win some, you lose some. With that, UOL goes 2-4 from that day. UOL goes 2-4 from that day, and Pentanet go 1-4. And then we head to, and I like this because I don't know if Riot did this on purpose. I don't think they did. They might have. Who knows? We get Royal Never Give Up versus Pentanet GG on this, like, and I'm putting like blue side, red side just to make it easier. And this is where I started getting really impressed by the way that Pentanet was approaching the game against RNG. They knew full well they were not of the same kind of caliber, and so they were just going to meet them at the place that like they thrive in, and that's chaotic team fighting. And my god, I hate this game so much, but I love a couple of things that Pentanet tried to do against RNG, and RNG needs to rein back, because if a better team tries to do this exact same thing to them, they're gonna lose. And we know this because FunPlus does this. They really like hammered in tempo and just went for it against them, and they lost. 4 out of the 7 games against FunPlus that RNG did, they lost against from that kind of play. And Pentanet went perfect. They get goaded very easily into these like high octane fights. So let's just high octane fight it. They had, it's unfortunate because they were not super clean at it. They had tempo control. They had a good sense of like proactivity and initiative from it. And both sides were doing the same thing. And Pentanet, it's like the scene from like Captain America where he's just literally passing Falcons, like RNG's literally Cap and then Pentanet's Falcon, and they're trying really hard, but like it's endgame, and this is a terrible analogy. The point I'm saying is that like Pentanet are keeping up but trailing behind so slowly. It's the Usain Bolt image where like the Canadian sprinter literally is just like inches behind him, and he's like, ah ha ha, you almost got me. That's the closest analogy, because Pentanet really did like kept them for like going over and over and over again, and it's a lot of fun if you like watching a lot of fights. It's not great in terms of quality League of Legends. It's kind of garbage, really, but it's a lot of really interesting fight, and it shows how each team prioritizes target selection, because Pentanet prioritizes whatever will make a team react faster, while as RNG will make sure that they target whatever will make it easier for them to continue the fight. So, what do I mean by that? It's like saying, okay, so Pentanet will attack the support, or will attack the ADC, or the like key targets, and that immediately will trigger the rest of the team to come in and support them. While as RNG, when they're attacking somebody, they will attack whatever target is not necessarily the key target, but is the one that makes the fights harder for them to win. And like when that person goes down, in this case, this was specifically BioPanther playing Urgot in this game. Literally, the fight that I remember is the last one. You can tell that RNG have finally gone and like had enough of doing this nonsense, and they were like, "All right, enough is enough," and found BioPanther, and then slowly but surely whittled him down, killed him, and he was literally the largest disruptor of the fights. It was making RNG life pretty difficult to completely win these fights in those scenarios. And then the second he was down, the game was done. It, like, fights became super easy for them. They had the gold lead for it, and they had the better execution on the team fights themselves. And Pentanet couldn't go for their kind of disruptive fight style because the player they were using that to make it work was down. Hopefully that made sense, right? Because there's different ways to target in team fights. There's you can do switching targets where you specifically engage on one person and making sure that they reposition in a way so that it's easier to hit your target that you want. I could probably make a video on this. If that's something you want, leave it in the comments below, but I don't have, for the scope of this video, not the time for it. And again, RNG, like all of the games, they close this one really quickly, leading them to become 6-0, and Pentanet become 1-5, leaving to the next game, where we got Royal Never Give Up RNG versus the Unicorns. And this was, it starts off nicely, right? Unicorns invade, and you're like, all right, cool. They're going to do something proactive early. It's a good thing because teams that tend to, I think one of the casters for one of the games mentioned it, that they prefer seeing teams that are proactive and are trying to do early game strats that are really like, let's go, as opposed to like waiting and scaling. I'm in the mix of between the two. I think that if you're going to be losing, you want to take things that do have early game options, but something you can fall back on and that they're much simpler. Anything that usually like super hyper early game is really complicated to pull off. That being said, in this game, UOL goes for the extra simple, but with, like, again, a Nidalee. They do a level 1 invade. They do a level 1 invade, and to me at first glance, I was like, alright, this is cool. Something proactive. They can maybe get some flashes out of it, and they do stuff for vision. But in the meanwhile, they don't do anything at all to make sure that the same thing isn't happening on the other side. And because they let way back on the Rumble, all hell ensues really quickly. Because this is a pre-20-minute end game. This is one of those things where UOL, like the Unicorns, could not answer anything. And they try, like, there's a lot of stuff that happens, but they keep opting into fights with low vision. They're forcing themselves to do mistakes, and it's like they were scared. There was like no proactivity outside of that level 1 play. And this is, at this point, this is the tipping point for me going like, oh, there's a very good chance that they don't make it out. Like, part of me is like, alright, technically they're from the region that I think is marginally, if not significantly, better than Oceania. But in international tournaments, it doesn't matter if your team is in a good region or a bad region. At the time, the good team will win out, regardless of how good the region is. And it, for me, UOL was just like reverting back to their inflexible ways. They started leaving up things that they weren't supposed to, that they, the first 2 games of the day, it looked like they had rectified. They were picking things that were not great for their playstyle. They were opting into bizarre fights. They looked frustrated, but also absolutely scared to even approach anything. Like, anything at all. And I could not think that they would, even if they made it through, because we realized we'd have one team that normally would not go through, right? Or who knows, maybe they would have done better if GAM was there, but I doubt it. I'm pretty certain that if GAM was in this group, the other 2 teams would not have made it. That being said, we're not in that world, but like, to me, like, either of the 2 teams that make it through would not do very well at all. At all. against the other four teams that qualify with Royal Never Give Up. And currently with UOL, if the Unicorns actually qualified from this, their lack of proactivity and it's just the passiveness to just like wait and let themselves die in is not a good look. It is not at all a good look. It was pretty bad. So, with that, the next game is where things start getting pretty bad also. Because then we get Pentanet versus GG versus Unicorns of Love in what is technically the last game of their quadruple round robin. And it will lead to a tie that will eventually lead to a tiebreaker, one step at a time. I also hate this game. This game is awful. I really don't like it. I don't like the games between these two teams. I like, for the one hand, memes. For the other hand, like maybe quality games, please. On one hand, lots of really interesting fights. On the other hand, the fights are kind of like messy and just not needed. And both of them picked really difficult compositions to explore. Like, I don't know why. And it's not like, and I appreciate at least you all did something that, like, on execution is technically simpler than whatever Pentanet did. But required so much scaling in a meta that, like, games finish anywhere between 24 to 28 minutes. And you pick Vladimir? Like, are you prepared? Are you trying to win on a speed run, on a record here? Like, you lose a game in pre 20 minutes, and then, all right, we gotta do the same thing, but this time with a game that requires us to go 36 plus minutes. Like, and on the other hand, all right, Pentanet, I like your memes, but also please stop. There's it feels very much like you guys are practicing things that'll catch people off guard more than that they'll actually function. Because there was very little in terms of engage. There's a lot of re-engage here, but it's an incredibly difficult composition for you to apply to, and you are not a team that I think does well in terms of complicated compositions. That being said, this was still a fairly chaotic game, and Pentanet tends to thrive better and on chaos. Unicorns start off this game with a tempo lead, and honestly, great. That means that they understand a couple of things that they need to uphold. It's just Pentanet was much more proactive this game, and this is where the lack of proactivity that Unicorns and Pentanet both started to have at the start of this tournament defer because Pentanet decided to pick up the proactivity much more. There was this attitude that they looked like they had that showed, we don't care anymore. We're gonna do this, and you're going to let us do it. And for the most part, great. I don't know if it's gonna work for you guys when you get to the Rumble stage, but this shows at least that they are willing to go for things and they're willing to like meet people on their terms. I just wish that they would be a little bit more thoughtful about how that interacts with the meta currently, but it's more thought process than Unicorns were bringing up. And it's really unfortunate because the Unicorns day one showed something that was fairly impressive, and it just disappeared. It just didn't happen for every other day after that. Yeah. At some point I wrote down, UOL is being so passive, like, why are you hesitating? This is the game you needed to win to get to the Rumble stage, or you were likely putting up in the hands of the air that somehow Pentanet beats RNG because between the two of you, Pentanet had been the more competitive team against Royal Never Give Up. The vision in this game was pretty horrific. I didn't like the way that any of the neutral objectives were set up. And it's really bizarre because these two teams at least have shown a proficiency in doing so. But it seems like the ways of their own regions have started seeping in little bit by little bit. Not even for the unicorns. They're a lot more proactive in their region. It's just so weird. And also, Pentanet was out team fighting them. A team that has like a solid track record of being very good at that. And Pentanet just straight up out team fought them on a regular basis. Um, Also, awesome, Pentanet, you closed this game out really quickly and with a very good Baron. I would say I'm impressed, but this felt more like UOL was giving up more than anything else. But I'm happy to see that you guys didn't just wait and just like kept cycling through Barons just to make sure that you got it right, which is such a tendency for lower tier teams to go for. And with that, we get to our technically last game of the day, but we got the tiebreaker game after this. We got ourselves the Pentanet GG versus Royal Never Give Up. And I saw on Twitter watching this that somebody saying that like doing the swap of players, where they put Xiaohu, their top laner, into mid lane, took out Krine, and then put their temporary substitute top laner, Xiaobo? I don't remember names. Where is it? Yeah, I don't remember, but they had their got kids upstairs for some reason that are like anywho, the it felt like it's an amount of disrespect, but for me, I don't know if it was disrespect, but a recognition of an opportunity for Royal Never Give Up to get their substitute top laner to play. They said they were leaving Crying to rest. I don't know what that means, but it gives an opportunity for their substitute. Don't have kids. I'm kidding, but like, the upstairs neighbor literally needs to just like strangle the. Like, I think it was an opportunity for them to have their substitute top laner and experience in playing, but you could tell that the skill level was not there, or not that it wasn't there, but that was like significantly different, not as high as quality. It shows that the coordination wasn't fully there, but at least they had a trial period for people to see, or for the team internally to see how that would look like if they were to substitute in their top laner. That being said, this is the cleanest game that RNG have. It was really stupid of Pentanet, I'm not gonna lie, to have Pabu flash to try to do an invade. At any point whatsoever, RNG just straight up tries to like counter the invade. He's dead. He loses the flash. Dead to rights. I also think that picking Vayne. Look, are you Uzi? Are you Uzi of old, right? Are you? No? Don't pick Vayne internationally. To me, anybody who picks Vayne is telling the opponent that I am a bot laner so far better and above you that I will take this garbage champion. And like, sure, probably not that garbage, but in international play, it requires so many resources that like you cannot afford putting into the bot lane. It is a role that does not afford doing so, and you can't put it top lane or mid lane because its tools are not designed for that. Oh god, it's always one vein every international tournament, and some bozo picks it who's not supposed to. That said, Pentanet show up with some. I like the improvement that Pentanet have of vision, more and more every game. It's still not super great along like across the board, but there's like a clear understanding of where to set up their vision so that they have proper information to attack their win conditions. RNG, however, don't let at any point Pentanet breathe in this game at all. They have incredible manipulation of waves with the end setups for neutral objectives, and they balloon the lead fairly hard. It just seems like they're still being a little bit too, you know, over aggressive, and they get caught out. And Pentanet is much better at calling this out than Unicorns were, which just tells me that Royal Never Go Up is not going to be able to pull this kind of stuff off again against any of the other four teams that qualify. But they almost pull off another pre 20-minute game. In fact, I think it's a 22-minute game. Yeah, they don't use any Baron. It's like it's like a 22-minute game, and Xiaohu ends that game like 13-0-3. Like this was, and every game that RNG played so far, the caster's like, it's a statement. A statement. It's less of a statement by RNG and more of a statement on the quality of the teams that both Unicorns of Love and Pentanet are. And like, to me, Pentanet is still deserving to be on the lower end of the bar. I'm happy to see a huge drastic improvement, but I also think they got really lucky in terms of the drawing of the groups and the whole pandemic situation. I mean, no, the pandemic is not lucky. Rewinding. They got lucky the fact that one of their teams could not come to the tournament. That usually probably would have made it harder for them to qualify for like the next stage. If they were in a different group, or if the team that was supposed to be in this group stayed or was able to stay, then I don't think Pentanet would have made it further. But what this shows me is that Unicorns were not at all playing to the same standard of play that they had in the LCL or in Russia. It's plain as fact, right? And so these are not statements about the ability for RNG to take over. I mean, to be clear, RNG is showing that they are better at dealing with their tier 3 and tier 4 teams than the other groups. That does not mean, however, that it is such a significant statement that they are leagues and above everybody else. They are the favorites. I still consider them the best team so far in the tournament, but not so much that they're leagues and above anything else. Depending on how Mad Lions play in their next couple of games, maybe it's them that could compete. So far, I think Damwon can also compete fairly well against them. And maybe Paris, Saint-Germain, and maybe Cloud9. I'm mostly joking about Cloud9, but you know, who knows? We'll see. That leads us to the tiebreaker game. But with that, I'm just going to do a thing real quick. Because RNG qualified, we're going to put a little green circle around them. Isn't that nice? Look at that. They qualified, huzzah. But in this game, due to the way that they decided to do things, somebody opted in so that Unicorns is on blue side and Pentanet is on red side. Usually teams like the blue side, so I'm guessing UOL won the whatever supposed coin flip was. And I, again, don't like this. I mean, I like this game better than the other two they played today. But, it was not great. Again, UOL has a better understanding of vision than Pentanet. But Pentanet is much better in terms of the tempo lead, being more proactive, better in terms of the team fighting. They kept out team fighting them. They had solid vision also, Pentanet. Like, both of them had solid vision in the early game. It gets much worse near the mid and late game. They tend to just be kind of, again, fast and loose with the vision that they play. But, you take whatever you can. And you all kept opting into bizarre fights. Like, they had a a composition that, on paper, it's simple, it's front to back, has some dives, it required early leads, but they were playing against a team composition that also required early leads, that had worse engage options. By all accounts, this was a terrible composition from Pentanet compared to and it baffles me that they just kind of opted into a bunch of weird fights and then just let themselves cave in and die. Especially out of so much hype usually that comes out of the unicorns, and the unicorns just kind of disappointed in ways that are just so upsetting sometimes. And I'm not even a big fan. I'm usually pretty harsh and harping on the Russian league, but the LCL in and of itself is still a region that breeds really good team fighters and high skill players with an understanding of how to do pick bans for those two things, and that was never shown in this entire tournament. The hell? I am, however, compared to that, the LCO or the Oceanic region in general, holy smokes, Pentanet, you really improved day to day to day to day. For these last 4 days, you've shown an incredible amount of progress, that you improved in terms of, I think, your team fighting. You're much better also at recognizing and reading the meta, even if you kept bringing up picks that are just absolutely bonkers. I imagine that when you're going to be coming up into the Rumble stage, you'll still bring up bonkers picks, but they'll have some fit into them instead of just being a thing that's random for the sake of it. Please avoid doing that as much as possible, but with that, however, I do want to point out that as much as there's an improvement from Pentanet, I don't think they're still pretty up to snuff to make it further than the Rumble stage. And I mentioned it already. I think that they're primarily lucky from this. The Unicorns finished this with a loss, with essentially, if it was a best of 5, it would be 3-2, which makes them very close in skill. But given that, I have to say congrats to Pentanet for making through, and I'll put a little green circle around them and a very gnarly red X above the Unicorns, as they have no longer qualified. And with that, I also would like to readjust the power ranking, but it's not much of a move, right? There's not that many teams that have been influenced, so I'm just going to move up Pentanet for now to not last place and put Unicorns in last place for now. Again, the next coming days will adjust things as they go, but the games so far didn't tell me that either Unicorns or Pentanet were much better or much worse than the Wildcats. So that's why the Wildcats are still amongst them. And this entire this entire right side here, with the 5 lowest teams, is incredibly close. And even then, the bottom 6 teams in this tournament just shows me so far that they're all incredibly close to each other, but that there is a significant gap still, and not tremendously huge that they can't compete in any way, shape, or form, but there's still a significant skill gap between what I feel like is the Cloud9 to Paris Saint-Germain line. And I feel like Cloud9 is the standard team that people have to be able to beat to like even say that they could like win the tournament. You guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. This I think was a interesting study case in terms of like best of like four-way or like 4-round best of ones in a short period of time. So yeah. But I don't think that the two teams. I don't think that like the second team out of this group that qualified shows anything that makes them significantly better or makes them a top 6 teams amongst all of the teams that qualified. Because remember, just because you qualify for the Rumble stage doesn't mean you're top 6. At least not in terms of power ranking. You do technically make top 60. That's how your the results would show. But to me, that's not the same thing. You have yet to show me something that would really push me over the edge to think so. But yeah, you guys let me think in the let me know what you think in the comments down below. What did you think of the games? Were they exciting for you? Did you enjoy them? Were they also equally frustrating for you? Do you think that maybe these games show that RNG is not as good as they should, as people expect them to be? Maybe there's some cracks. Do you think Pentanet is like much better than people expected, or like around the same, but they got really exciting and made history? And they did make history. Congratulations to the Oceanic regions for the first time ever making it out to a second stage of a tournament that's organized by Riot. Good job. With that, like and subscribe to enjoy the video. Again, on this side, I'm going to be putting the playlist for the Road to MSI, which is where I watch all 12 regions playoff series, which is how I do most of my informed analysis. And on this side, I'll put the playlist for so far Clearing Vision, the MSI playlist, where it'll include all of the videos for the MSI tournament. And thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.